This morning I want to talk to you on the subject, the power of no. Now, in the book of Nehemiah is where we're going to be. We're in Nehemiah chapter 6. But I want to talk to you today on the subject of focus, basically, the idea of focus. Real quick, let me ask the teenagers, do you find it, you guys that are teens, do you find it hard to focus these days? Is it difficult for y'all to focus? A lot going on in your life, like there's always a lot of stuff. Let me ask those who are like my age, approximately, let's say 30s and 40s. Is it harder to focus? Do you think it's harder to focus now than it was when you were a kid? All right. So I'm seeing some general yeses across the way. Some people are looking at it and saying, hey, the other day Eric was talking to me, he said, I have attention deficit. Oh, look, a squirrel. Yeah, about like that, right? Yeah. Let me ask those of you who are, let's say, 60 and up, all right? Is it harder to focus now than it was 50 years ago? Can you remember what you... It is I think it is. I think it's harder to focus. I think it's more difficult than it used to be. Why is it harder to focus? Well, I've got a few suggestions of things it could be on your handout. Social networking. Anybody on Facebook? How many of you are on Twitter? Anybody on Twitter? That's even shorter, like little, yeah. How many of you are on Snapchat? Anybody on Snapchat? All right, some of you are. Instagram, all right. It is hard. By the way, young kids are on Instagram and Snapchat more than they're on Facebook now, which is really fascinating. But so here's the deal. It used to be that you didn't know. You knew what you thought, and you knew what like maybe 15 other people thought, right? Or maybe 50 other people if you had a lot of friends. But now you can log into Facebook and know what everybody thinks. And you can be angry at things you didn't even know about 10 seconds ago, right? The truth is, 100 years ago, you could have lived your whole life and not known to be angry about some of the stuff that now you can know 10 things you should be angry about inside of 5 minutes when you get up just by checking your news feed. You can know tragedies that happened in seconds that it used to be 100 years ago you would have lived your entire life and never knew it happened. The average person today is exposed to more information in one Sunday edition of the paper, the newspaper, which most people don't even get anymore because they get it all on the internet, right? You're exposed now to more information in a single edition, Sunday edition of the New York Times than the average person would be in a decade 150 years ago. One single Sunday paper. Now, that means we've got a lot coming at us. You got a lot of stimuli. You got a lot coming at you. You got a lot of things jumping up. And the social networking, the options that are created by wealth have actually given us a difficulty focusing. We have options, and we have less ability to stay focused and stay zoned in on things. It used to be that how many of you remember when you had like 4 toys? When you were growing up, like you had 4 toys, and 2 of them were sticks, right? And one was a box, and only one of them came from a store, right? Like that's the way it used to be. But now, the average kid has so many toys, and they all don't come with batteries. Right? They all need batteries, and they all do different things. They all flash, and What about lights? You ever think about this? It used to be 150 years ago when it got dark. Guess what you did? You might light a lamp for a little while, but that was expensive, and you had to go to this, you had to make your own tallow and your own candle. So guess what you did? You went to bed. Yeah. When it got dark, you let the fire start burning down, or if it's wintertime, you stoke it up a little bit, close the stove, and you go to bed. And you sleep. But now we can stay up. We can stay up way later than we should, like I did last night, researching random things on the internet. Yeah. The options of technology and options created by wealth. Transportation. It used to take time to go places. It used to be if you were going to go to town, it was like an all-day thing. Right? You were going to go into town. It might be a 2 or 3 day thing, depending on what part of the country you lived in. 100 years ago in Oklahoma, if you lived outside of Oklahoma City or Guthrie, you pretty much had to drive into town, and it would take you. You had to get your wagon and hook up the horses and make sure they were all well fed and taken care of, and then you load everybody in the wagon, and you take several hours to get to town, and then you shop around for a while, and then you take several hours to get back home, and then you unhook the wagon, and it's time to go to bed. Yeah. But now we're like, hey, babe, could you run real fast and stop by on your way home from work and get that thing at Aldi, and they're just running across there like this, because at Aldi, they check your groceries really fast. If boop, 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 and then you run out the door, and you run home, and you microwave your supper, right? And you can do so much more stuff than you used to do because we've got options. A party line. And everybody else is on there too, yeah. Pull those connections. Yeah, absolutely. Because you play around on the party line. Some of y'all remember this. You used to play around and play jokes on people on the party line. Yeah. Here's what I'd like to investigate this morning. Let's look at how Nehemiah dealt with distractions. When Nehemiah was building a great project, okay, he's building the wall. You remember the story? Nehemiah is a slave. He's risen high in the government, however, because of his integrity, his intelligence, his skill and administrative and leadership ability. He's risen in the government in the place where the Jews are captive, in Persia, in Babylon. He has risen to this place, and now he hears that the exiles in Jerusalem are in horrible shape. They're always in danger. They're in humiliation because the wall of Jerusalem is broken down. The gates are burned with fire. The place is a wreck. And they can't get themselves together to rebuild it. And he is brokenhearted. He says, we're going back. I'm going back. He prays, he fasts, he weeps, he cries. He talks to the king. He puts together a plan. They make the journey to Jerusalem. He gets the people together and says, let's build this wall. They get together and they start. But how many of you know when you start building something that you really know is important, right? You start building a family. You start building a spiritual life. You start building a relationship with God. How many of you know that does not mean the devil died and walked away? Right? Because he's coming along, and the first thing he wants to do is throw obstacles in your path and distract you away from your mission. Remember, we talked about finding your why. Why do you exist? If you know your why, you can deal with almost any what. Nehemiah he knows his why. Let's look and see what he did. First of all, if you're taking notes, number 1, say no often. If you're building something that lasts, so you want to build something that lasts, say no often. Nehemiah chapter 6, let's read. When the word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies, that I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it, although up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates. Okay, you get the picture. They're building the wall, and it's not all the way up. It's not finished all the way, but there's no gaps left. Like the wall it's starting to come together. The gaps are closing, and the wall's going up. There are no gaps left. He hadn't set the doors and gates yet. Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messengers to them with this reply. Okay, everybody get a hold of a pen and underline this next verse, this next thing, and circle it and put flashing lights around it. Are you ready? Here we go. So I sent the messengers to them with this reply. I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message. And each time I gave them the same answer. Now, we could just about go home, honestly, with that phrase right there. Like that verse, we could probably just go home like, all right, say that about everything that wants to distract you from your mission. We could just about quit right there. But if you're taking notes, you can't build something great without saying no to a lot of other things. You cannot build something great without saying no to a lot of other things. A few years ago, there was a book written that absolutely took the business world by storm. The book was by a guy named Jim Collins, who is a business researcher, and he wrote a book called Good to Great. And he investigated companies that would bump along average like this for a long time, and then all of a sudden they would just take off. Like they would be for years. They had to have, I think, 20 years of existence, of average existence, before he would consider that to do the research project on that company. They bump along like this, and then all of a sudden, they would just take off. And they had to have a certain amount of growth over a sustained period of time after that change. And he investigated that, and he started asking, what in the world caused this, and started investigating it. And what he said is this. And you write this down. It's not on your handout. Write this down in the margin of your handout. Are you ready? Here's what he said. Good is the enemy of great. Good is the enemy of great. In other words, if things are okay, things are average. You know, it's going along okay. It's bumping along all right. Things are good. It is hard to break through to great until you're willing to let go and say no to some good things. The multiplication, if you're taking notes, the multiplication of options is the biggest challenge to focus. I want you to take a look at a slide here on my PowerPoint. Like, it should be easy, right? Hey, go buy some toothpaste. All right. All right. I'm going to go, and then I'm going to wait. Do I want the whitening? Or do I want the more expensive whitening? Or do I want the kind with peroxide, or the kind with the scope mouthwash in it? Or do I want the kind with the non-abrasive? Or do I want the sensitive? Or do I want the... It's just teeth, y'all. Come on, can you cut us some slack here? An explosion of specialized pastes and gels brag about their power to whiten teeth, reduce plaque, curb sensitivity, fight gingivitis, sometimes all at the same time, and in all the flavors and sizes. The simple errand of buying toothpaste turns into a sensory overload. Manufacturers acknowledge this problem and are putting the brakes on new product introductions. Last year, 69 new toothpastes hit the shelves. Only 69. And they phased out some others, and they brought in some 69 new, but that's down from 102 in 2007. 102 new kinds of toothpastes. Procter & Gamble, who makes Crest, says it has significantly reduced the number of its oral care products it makes in the past 2 years. They said, we've come to realize that fewer is better. Stores are also trying to simplify. Last month, 352 distinct types or sizes of toothpastes were sold at retail, down from 412 the previous March. Only 352 choices now. You used to have 412, now you've got 352. It gets overwhelming, right? Like you get options, and sometimes, how many of you know the problem I'm talking about when I say the paralysis of analysis? Right? You're locking up and you're like, I had this problem when I was a kid. My mom and dad took me to the store right before Halloween, and they said, pick out a kind of candy. Now, I stood on that candy aisle, and you know what the candy aisle looks like at Halloween, right? I mean, it's just... And I walked back and forth, and I started getting this kind, but then they might have another kind and so I walk over here. And I remember walking back and forth for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, until my mom and dad were like, Darrell Lee, that's what they called me then, pick something, we've got to go, you got to choose something. I was frustrated, and I was like 9, too many choices. Very interesting, the research indicates these days that a few options increases your joy in your choice. A few options. But the more options you get, the lower your satisfaction in your choice. So you get more options and you're less happy with what you wind up getting sometimes. That's the overwhelmingness. The more options you have, the harder it is to just choose something and focus and move forward, right? But now you've got 500 channels and million internet sites, and there is so much video uploaded to YouTube every minute. This is true. You could not watch in 24 hours. You could not watch the amount. You could not watch in a week. Watching 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You could not watch in a week the amount of video that was uploaded to YouTube in the last 60 seconds. By the way, some of those are my sermons. That's so we upload all those, and you're not watching that. Yeah, right. He's like, that's easy to say no. Yeah. Now here's the thing. What are some things we need to say no to? Have you thought this through? Andy Stanley says, your to-don't list is as important or maybe more important than your to-do list. Do you have a to-don't list? You know what I'm saying, right? I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to do that. Right? Do you have a to-don't list? It is really easy to get overwhelmed with all the options. It used to be the kids just went outside and played with their friends with 2 sticks and a bunch of mud until dark and then came back inside. But now we got to run them to baseball, and we got to run them to soccer, and then we got to run them to the after-school program, and they come home and they've got 16,000 different movies on Netflix that they want to watch all at the same time. I've got a neighbor that watches 2 TVs at once. He's got 2 big screens in his little man cave thing, and he's got 2 big screens, and he watches both of them at the same time. They're all the time. I go by and I see through the window. He's got both screens on 2 different programs all the time. Got a football game on one and American Ninja Warrior on the other. We've got options. It is hard to say no, isn't it? It's hard. It's hard to say no. But here's the thing. If you get your mission really clear and you want to build something great, you're going to have to say no to some good in order to build something great. You don't have choice. You've got to do that. You've got to say no to some good stuff to build something great. Number 2, mostly, do not respond to attacks or slights. Okay, so number 1, you got to say no often. Number 2, do not respond to attacks or slights. Verse 5, then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message. Have you noticed that they don't quit either? Like the devil never quits, right? In his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king. I want to push pause just for a second here. Do you notice it says it was an unsealed letter? Okay, in these days it was common to write a letter, roll it up or fold it, and then they would drip wax on it and seal it so that if anybody had opened it, you could tell, right? You could tell it had been opened. This guy writes all these insults and all these lies about what they're doing, like, oh yeah, they're going to build the wall because they're going to rebel, and that Nehemiah is going to make himself king, and they're going to rebel against the rule of Persia. Ha! And he puts it in an unsealed letter and sends it to him. This is like forwarding it to everybody. This is like Facebook. Right? This is like he's putting all this stuff out in public. It's not just for Nehemiah's eyes and Nehemiah's breaking the seal. It's not sealed. Anybody could read it. Am I making sense? That's what and he did it on purpose. He's like, I'm going to leave this one unsealed so he knows anybody could open this up and read it. It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it's true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you're building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There's a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king. So come, yeah, I'll bet it get back to the king. You're going to make sure it gets back to the king. Yeah, I know who you are. You're that kind of person. You're going to take this, make up a bunch of stuff, and then make sure it winds up in the right hands. I know how you are, right? This report will get back to the king. So come, let us confer together. He's putting the pressure on, right? Now he's saying, you have to pay attention to my distractions. So I sent him this reply. Nothing like what you're saying is happening. You're just making it up out of your head. End of story. He doesn't fight back. He doesn't start an argument. He doesn't have 72 comments on this post, on this status. He just says, nope, not true. Sorry, got to keep going. Build the wall, build the wall, build the wall. Sometimes, my friends, you're going to have to say, when somebody comes along and they're going to say this about you, they're going to say that about you, you're going to say, nope, not true. And then turn around and keep building. Turn around and pick up your tools. Because if you stop to fight back, you got to lay your tools down. You know what I'm saying? If you stop to chase everything. Sometimes, honestly, let me tell you this. Some of you got family who live in crisis mode. Okay? And they live in crisis mode. And the truth is that if you live on their roller coaster, you will never build something great. You got friends, some of you got friends that live in constant crisis mode. And they're like, can you get me out of this one? Can you get me out of that one? And if you live on their roller coaster, you'll never build something great. You won't build a great business or a great family or a great marriage or a great relationship with the Lord. You'll just be on their roller coaster. And there's times where some of you have people who you have conflict with at work or on Facebook or on here or on there, or family members who and if you don't learn to say, not true, and move on, instead of feeling like you got to stay there and argue with it for the next, if you don't learn to just and move on to what you really want to build, it's not going to happen. In fact, you're going to probably have to lengthen your to-don't list to include helping some people. Because sometimes when you're helping, you're not helping. Am I making sense to you? Right. Sometimes you're going to have to lengthen that to-don't list to include, I can't help that, and I can't get on their roller coaster, and their lack of planning does not constitute my emergency. Right? You can't always do that. Say no often, and mostly do not respond to attacks or slights. Do you notice what he says here? He says they were trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will get too weak for the work and it will not be completed. Now I know that when somebody attacks you, it hurts. When somebody mouths off because as soon as you say no to something, somebody's like, oh, can you do this, and you need to do that, and you say, no, sorry, I'm building something great. As soon as you say no, well, you just don't care about me. I just don't know why you do it. Am I making sense? This happens. I just don't know why. And now they're attacking you, right? And it hurts, and it's like, ow! Come on, don't you? And you could stay there and talk to them and say, don't you remember the 72 times that right? You could do that, or you could just say, you know that's not true. I love you, but I can't help. And then walk away and pick up your tools. Right? Pick up your tools. You're building something worth building. And you got to walk away sometimes and build. But I prayed, look at the last phrase of verse 9, but I prayed, now strengthen my hands. You see this? I love that short prayer. I love that. In fact, I've adopted that as one of my short prayers, right? I picked this one up. I said, that one's mine right there. And there will be times where I'm just, you're working and I'll say, Lord, strengthen my hands. Strengthen my hands. Not just literally these hands, but sometimes strengthen the hands in here too, right? Lord, strengthen me. Stand me up. Strengthen my hands. There's pressure to not do. There's pressure to get off mission. There's pressure to step away. There's pressure to not finish. Lord, strengthen my hands. Number 3, say no to fear and intimidation. Say no to fear and intimidation. Verse 10, one day I went out to the house of Shemaiah, son of Delaiah, the son of Methbel. I'm just going to leave that right there. Who was shut in at his home. And he said, let us meet in the house of God, inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors, because men are coming to kill you. By night, they're coming to kill you. But I said, should a man like me run away? Guys, that one's for you. That one's free, all right? Should a man like me run away? No. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to be chased off. I'm not going to be scared. Oh, I just don't know. Nope. Stand strong. Stand firm. You don't have to brag. You don't have to get a little man's complex. You don't have to prove how tough you are. Just stand there. Just stand there. Do the work. Pick up the tools. Let's keep going. Should one like me to go into the temple to save his life? I will not go. And I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He had been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and they would give me a bad name to discredit me. As soon as you go around like, you go around scared after a while, these guys would have been like, he heard a rumor they were going to kill him and he ran. He took off. I wouldn't. And they're going to try to discourage all the volunteers doing the work. All the people building that wall, they're going to try to discourage them by pointing to their leader running off and hiding in the temple. Now, guys, if you're going to lead your family, you can't run when things get tough. You can't. You got to stand. You just got to stand. And I don't mean stand and be mean or be ugly or yell or scream or throw stuff. I just mean you got to pick a spot and you got to stand. And you got to stay there and say, I will not run in the face of what is in front of me. I will not run from the pain or the difficulty. I will not run from the hard things. I will stand. Somebody say amen. All right, let's keep going. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who have been trying to intimidate me. I want to read you the lyrics of a song by Kirk Franklin. Kirk Franklin is a black gospel singer, and he wrote a really neat song. Some of you should check it out. It's called Hello Fear. Hello Fear, he writes it like a breakup song. All right, so I'm just going to preface that by saying that he writes it like a breakup song. Ready? Here we go. Hello Fear. Before you sit down, there's something I need to explain. Since you're here, I think I should tell you that since we last talked, things have changed. See, I'm tired of being brokenhearted, so I made a list, and you're on it. All my hopes and dreams you took from me, I want those back before you leave. Hello, Fear. I knew I would see you. You have a hard time letting go. See these tears? Take a good look, because soon they won't fall anymore. Because God's healing my broken places. The seat that was yours, now is taken. I'm no longer afraid. See, I'm better this way. And one more thing before you leave. Never again will I love you. My heart, it refuses to be your home. No longer your prisoner. Today I remember, apart from you is where I belong. You're going to have to look some things in the eye as a person and say, fear, we're breaking up. I'm not dating you anymore. I won't let you in the door. When you knock, the door is closed, double locked. It's over. I'm not having that relationship with you any longer. I'm tired of loving you and holding on to you and cherishing your fear and your anxiety at 3 a.m, wondering what was going to happen. I have realized that nothing ever I predicted at 3 a.m. ever came true. And I've decided I won't do it anymore. I won't be afraid. Say no to fear and intimidation. Now, if you're taking notes, when a voice tells you not to face the hard truth, that's not God. Okay? When a voice tells you, don't face the hard truth, run away, go to drugs, go to this, go to alcohol, go to that, run to somewhere else, go, get away, just get away. When a voice tells you, don't face the hard truth, that's not the Lord talking to you. But there's one other thing I've got to tell you too, because I don't want you just to face the hard truth. I want you to face it and not be afraid. You see, the second blank there is when a voice tells you, fear tomorrow, that's not God either. When a voice tells you, fear tomorrow, that's not God. It is not. You see, Jesus said, my peace I give to you. Not like the world gives. You see, the world gives a peace that is only there when everything is good. The world gives a peace that is only there when everything's going all right. But Jesus said, I'm not giving you the world's peace that's dependent on your circumstances. I'm giving you my peace. Peace like the bottom of the ocean. The top can be whipped up into a frenzy, but underneath the surface, there's calm. I'm not saying there's not going to be any chaos in your life. I'm not saying the devil's not going to come along and throw rocks at you. I'm just saying that when he barks, you can't throw rocks at every dog that barks. You got to walk on by. All right. Last part of the scripture. You ready? When you ignore the chatter, stuff gets built. When you ignore the chatter, stuff gets built. Now let's read verse 15. The wall was completed on the 25th day of Elul in 52 days. All right, everybody needs to wake up, so let's give them a round of applause for completing the wall, all right? Okay, all right. Now everybody's awake, all right? Here's the thing. There's going to come a day. Everybody look right up here. There is going to come a day where you are going to look back and say, we did it. It happened. Hey, we did it. It's built. That's the last stone. It's done. Like there's going to come a day where that's going to happen. You're going to get down the road if you'll stay focused, say no to a lot of stuff, say no to fear, say no to intimidation. Don't let them drag you around. Don't respond to every attack and every person who mouths off. Know your mission, know your why, stay on it. There's going to come a day where you're going to look back and say, hey, we did it. We built a marriage. We built a home. Our kids, like they're growing up and it's happening. I had a little moment like this a little while back. I was standing in a worship time at a place I was preaching out of town up in Kansas just a couple weeks ago. And as I was preaching there, we were worshiping and singing together, and one of my kids was in the row in front of me. And while we were singing and worshiping, I saw them lift their hand, worshiping God, just giving honor to Him. And bam, yes! Yeah! That's what I'm talking about. I'm doing my best, and sometimes you're like, oh, will this ever happen? And you're doing your best, but there's these moments where God pulls back the curtain a little bit and says, it's happening. See? It's right there, right there. See that? It's happening. And when those moments, just understand, those are little flashes of the joy and the happiness and the completion and the satisfaction of knowing your mission, staying focused on your mission, and when you get to where you're going, you've ignored enough voices to where you built something worth building. And I know your hands get tired, and I know you're tired of lifting that hammer. I know you're tired of holding the tools, but don't stop. Stay focused, because there's coming a day where something good gets built, and you look back and say, it happened. By the grace of God, it happened. I want to show you a slide. Adoniram Judson, a guy named Adoniram Judson, he was a famous Christian missionary. He sweated it out in Burma, the country of Burma, for 18 years without a furlough, and 6 years and without one person being saved. Not one. He didn't win a single convert for 6 years of his missionary work. He was the only Christian, as far as he knew, in Burma. He was translating the Bible, working, sweating it out, difficult days. He said he admitted during that time he was imprisoned, he was tortured a couple of times. He admitted he never one time saw a ship leave Burma without wanting to be on it. His wife's health broke, and he put her on a ship sailing back home with the knowledge that he would not see her for 2 years. And he wrote this in his diary. Ready? He said, quote, "If only we could find some quiet resting place on the earth where we could just spend the rest of our days in peace." Anybody know that feeling? Can we get away? Can we stop the world and let me get off, But he steadied himself by writing this. Listen, quote, "But life is short. Millions of Burmese are dying and going to hell, and I am almost the only person on earth who has attained their language enough to communicate salvation." Oh, dear God. Can we give me some of that? Can we give me some of that? When Adoniram Judson began his work in Burma, he set a goal of translating the Bible and founding a church of 100 people before he died. He said, I want to translate the Bible and leave a church of 100 Christians when I die. Before he died, he left the Bible, 100 churches, and 8,000 Christians. He built something, y'all. When you ignore the chatter and you ignore the other things and you say, I am building something worthwhile, if you're willing to ignore the other things, the pull of other things. One more slide. Francis Asbury. Francis Asbury is the only non-military, one of the only non-military equestrian horse statues in our nation's capital. Francis Asbury, nicknamed the Prophet of the Long Road, he was a Methodist. He was sent over to the United States before it was the United States by John Wesley to be the coordinator of the Methodist movement here on this side of the ocean. The Methodist movement was born in England under John Wesley. Wesley sent Asbury here. Asbury began to organize things. When he arrived, there were 5 preachers and 500 Methodists in America. 70 years later, I can't tell. I won't tell you that. I gotta hold that for a little bit. Asbury crossed the Allegheny Mountains 60 times on horseback. He rode in the area of 400,000 miles on horseback. Francis Asbury was the man who rode more, they believe he rode more on horseback in history than any other human who ever existed. 400,000 miles as best as they can reconstruct from his journals and his travels and historical records. He preached 60,400 sermons in 40 years. His face, literally, this is absolutely true. Francis Asbury's face was more recognizable in the United States than George Washington, because he had traveled around so much, preaching so many places. More people knew Francis Asbury. They knew of Washington's name, but his face was more recognizable than George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. At age 70, Asbury's feet were so swollen they could not fit them in the stirrups, so they would tie him to the saddle and he would ride on to the next place. But when he arrived in the United States, there were 5 pastors and 500 Methodists. 70 years later, there were 1 million Methodists. By 1860, basically 100 years after Asbury landed in America, by 1860, 1 in 3 Americans were Methodist. Now, here's what I'm saying. You got to build some things. Now, you may say, you may not be building, maybe you're not building a Methodist movement. You say, oh, I'm not sure if I'm a missionary. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. You're a missionary to your own family. What about to your neighbors? What about to your wife? What about to your husband? What about to your kids? Don't give up. Let's build something that matters. All right? Let's do it together by staying focused and saying no, so we can say yes to the best things. Would you bow your head with me? Let's pray.